From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. I'm Tyne Morgan, and here's what we're working on for you over the next 60 minutes. USDA shocked the market in August with monstrous production numbers. So will the bulls or bears win out next week?
I would say the bottom line, look at how we react rather than at the numbers.
Our market discussion is on the road from Nebraska. On the heels of Harvey, Hurricane Irma threatening Florida's already decimated citrus industry. Farmers facing a stark financial picture with pressured prices.
I do think that the declines in net farm income have started to level off.
Our Farm Journal report explores why better days may be ahead. And in John's world,
drones versus satellites.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Now for the market-related news. On the heels of Hurricane Harvey, a Category 5 hurricane barreling toward the Florida coast this week, with produce companies and ports bracing for the worst. In preparation, the governor declaring a state of emergency in Florida, with produce companies halting shipments in order to give employees time to prepare. And with orange harvest just around the corner, Florida citrus growers already fighting to save a rapidly declining industry, only to have harvest-ready fruit possibly ripped away. Those growers already dealing with a crop cut by more than 2/3 due to citrus greening. Well, unharvested, vulnerable crops still setting in the field in the southeast. According to USDA, cotton harvest isn't really rolling yet, but growers setting on a bumper crop, with 100% of Georgia's cotton rated good to excellent. In South Carolina, 95% is in the good to excellent category. And we've seen the devastation from Hurricane Harvey. The Louisiana NASS report shows the state's cotton crop lost 14 points in quality last week. Now 49% is good to excellent. It's unfortunate timing, as nearly 3/4 of the cotton crop had open bolls. And the state's soybean crop also lost 14 points. 56% is rated good to excellent. About half of the crop was nearly ready for harvest.
Agriculture's national forecast is brought to you by Ilevo Seed Treatment from Bayer.
All right, those are the headlines. Meteorologist Cindy Clausen joins us now with weather. Cindy, so many unknowns with Hurricane Irma, but harvest is ramping up for many of our viewers. So how is rain panning out the rest of the week?
Well, Tyne, overall, not too bad in much of the Corn Belt. Let's start off with the drought monitor, though. We're going to be looking at dry conditions continuing for a lot of the northwestern United States into the northern plains. Still some dry areas as you get into parts of the Corn Belt as well, especially the southern part of Iowa. We're starting to see some extreme drought there. But take a look over the past 4 weeks, and you really see that it's been kind of expanding into the northeast or northwestern United States. So things really have been on the dry side there, and it continues to be that way. And as we again look at the past 4 weeks, you really see that dryness kind of shifting out into Montana, into Idaho as well, but still remaining in parts of the Corn Belt. All right, as we head through the week ahead, of course, we're going to have Hurricane Irma. We're going to figure out and see how much rain actually falls as we get into the next week. And it could be a lot of rain in the southeastern United States. Otherwise, we do have a front that's draping across the upper Midwest. That'll bring a little bit of rain activity to folks there, and a little unsettled weather with a low pressure system around the eastern part of Colorado. Otherwise, we'll see some sunshine for the nation's midsection, kind of warm though as you get into the south and southwest. For Wednesday, we'll see another front coming into parts of the western Great Lakes and upper Midwest. Look for some showers, maybe a few rumbles of thunder there as well. Of course, we'll see the hopefully remnants of Irma by then, and then we will be seeing some showers and some rumbles of thunder there as well. We'll keep an eye on that. And then as we head into Friday, we'll be looking at some decent harvest weather for folks in the Corn Belt. A little bit on the cool side though, but a lot of sunshine even all the way down to the Gulf Coast. That's your national forecast. I'll have more weather coming up later on in the show.
All right, thanks, Cindy. USDA's August report threw curveballs into the market, but could we see a repeat when USDA releases its September production report? That's coming up next week. We're on the road with Alan Brugler, Don Rose, and Arlen Suderman next.
U.S. Farm Report on the road at the Farm Journal Yield Tour is brought to you by AgriGold. More diversity, less risk, greater yield.
Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. Well, on the road this week from the final Farm Journal Yield Tour stop
here in Omaha, Nebraska. Don Rose, Alan Brugler, and Arlen Suderman on the panel with me this week. The big story right now, looking into next week, is this USDA report that's coming out. August report definitely was not what the trade was expecting. What are you expecting out of next week's report?
Well, I think the big thing is that we're not getting more bearish surprises. I think the trade has definitely taken a better attitude toward the commodity sector at large. You look across the spectrum of commodities, we're seeing money flow in. A little bit worried to make the total assumption because it is still early in the month with new money coming in there to set new trends, but we are turning the charts. So I think with the grain and oilseeds, if we fail to get fresh bearish news, we don't see the yields increase, so to speak, of any significance, then I think the funds will get behind it. Once we have the algorithmic traders trade it, then I think we'll start seeing the money kind of come behind it.
So you think any type of yield decrease, shaving any bushel off, 1, 2, 3, will create a bullish story?
Yeah, maybe not initially if it's still above what the average trade guess ahead that the algorithmic traders have programmed in. But after that, I think so. I'm not bullish, so to speak. We still have big supplies out there, but I do think that in the weeks and months ahead, we'll have slow appreciation of price.
Alan, do you agree with that, or do you think we need kind of a bigger chunk taken out of this production?
Well, I think we have to remember that we are coming into what's traditionally a harvest low period. That is the 1st of October. Cash average price for the U.S. typically bottoms the first week of October. We're getting a nice little short covering rally. We are seeing some fresh fund money coming in, as Arlen mentioned. The market was set up perfectly for that with the technical setup. We were way oversold at the end of August. So I think we've got permission to go up into the crop report. Holding those gains into late September is going to be a little more of a challenge. I think if you were to get the U.S. Corn yield down to 167 or something like that, that would allow us to extend the gains.
You do. So even a 167, you're thinking just a couple or a few bushels off would create a story there. What about in soybeans, though, Don? I mean, I know it's still kind of early on. We are going to get a better look at this crop, but what has to happen with the soybean production and yield to really see the market react in a positive way?
Well, I think the real question mark is, have we put in our seasonal low, not only on soybeans, but on corn and the wheat market? From an overall crop condition rating, the crop ratings where they're at, 61%, really that puts you a yield closer to 47 bushels an acre. So if you look at it, if you take 2.5 bushels off of the yield, you can get a carryout down under 300 million. So I think it would be, with the dry August that we've had, it'd be unusual for the yield to go up. So I think if a yield comes down, we'll probably add some risk premium to the market. Remember, the Chinese are terrific buyers under the market.
Yeah, we've seen this demand story play out in the soybeans. So production-wise, considering demand, considering stocks, production-wise on both corn and beans, what number do you want to see out of USDA next week?
Well, I think it's probably more the reaction than the actual price is what I would look at. But, I think it's going to be hard to get a carryout down under 2 billion bushels. I don't know if it really matters. I think what it really is the producer just at these price levels, particularly wheat and corn, he's just not interested in selling. And so he's tucking it away from the market, and the carriers are giving you that. So I would say the bottom line, look at how we react rather than at the numbers.
Yeah, and kind of you alluded to that too. Arlen, but when we look at wheat, what type of story are you looking for to come out of this report regarding wheat?
Well, I look for the USDA to add some more bushels to the Black Sea crop. I think we'll probably see Russia's number and perhaps Ukraine's number push up a little bit higher, but at this point, does it really matter? We've exceeded export capacity out of Russia, so they can produce all the more they want, but they can't export more than what they have. They can't export what we know now that they've produced. And U.S. hard red winter wheat is very well positioned there, and I'm looking for USDA to eventually push our export number higher. We've still got a big supply, so it's going to be a long time before we can talk about being bullish wheat, but I do think that we can confirm near-term lows.
Well, USDA report could be a major story next week. Here in Omaha, I was watching the local news, and temperature readings in the morning, they were around 32 degrees in some areas. So we're seeing these cooler temperatures come into play. Do you think that a frost story can brew, and what's our window for that?
Well, I think it will have an impact anywhere up to the first part of October, simply because the crop maturities are a little bit behind. But again, we're supposed to warm up. This was supposed to be the low day of the week, and then we start to see the western Corn Belt warm up a little bit going forward. So I think we've probably dodged the bullet here for this one. But again, if you hit another cold spell 2 weeks out, I think it could have a little leg to it. The problem is, of course, the crop will be a little more mature 2 weeks. You're talking test weight impacts more than massive bushel losses here.
You agree with that, or do you think that we could get a story if we start to see some pictures of frost?
Well, you know, typically we lose 5 to 10 to 15 million bushels every year from some low-lying areas, so I would anticipate that. But, you know, I'm more concerned, Tyne, about the dry weather that we've had in August. I think it just wasn't the finish that you wanted. I think in the next 5 to 10 days it's not going to matter, and I think that's the real issue for the soybeans. It just wasn't the August that you were hoping for big yields.
At the same time, we just saw Hurricane Harvey. We have Hurricane Irma knocking. I mean, definitely we'll get into possible impacts in the south of that. Also, a weakening U.S. dollar. I mean, that should be good news for exports. So is that a story that we can count on coming up in the next few months? We'll talk about that when we come back on U.S. Farm Report.
U.S. Farm Report on the road at the Farm Journal Yield Tour is brought to you by AgriGold. More diversity, less risk, greater yield.
All right, welcome back. Again, we're from the Farm Journal Yield Tour. A big thanks to the sponsors for this. Arlen, you know, we talked about Hurricane Harvey, saw the devastation that hit in Texas, Louisiana, some of those areas. You know, we're recording this before the hurricane's really making landfall here in the U.S., but what possible impact do you think we could see from that on agriculture?
Well, Hurricane Harvey certainly had a big impact on local crops, but that's a very small percentage overall. I think probably cotton and rice saw the biggest direct impact as far as impacting supplies. Certainly had an impact on rail and movement of grain and loading onto ports. As we look at Irma coming into Florida and up the East Coast, certainly going to disrupt some movement of grain, some crops involved there as well. Cotton probably going to see the most significant impact once again. Much of this cotton crop has already been booked by the mills and needed. And so we're in a situation where we're seeing the cotton market start to reflect those concerns. When you look at the big percentage of corn and soybeans, not much impact. When you look at the local people, both livestock producers and movement of grain, as well as producers have crops in the field, it's a pretty big impact.
All right, switching gears over to the U.S. dollar. Saw a weakening U.S. dollar. You know, Alan, but it was surprising, even when we saw strength in this dollar, exports still remain pretty strong. So as we see this dollar weaken, kind of who benefits the most from that?
Well, obviously it makes us a little more competitive in the export market relative to Brazil or Argentina or somebody else. It depends on who you're weakening. We talk about the dollar as an index, but it's individual country relationships that drive the competitiveness. You know, we're watching the dollar pretty closely. The DX, which is only one of 3 or 4 ways of measuring the dollar index, is at 92. That is a major chart support point on the weekly and monthly charts. If we break that, it goes down to 88.5 or so. That would be a 4% swing. Well, if the dollar's 4% weaker, it takes 4% more dollars to buy the same supply and demand value. That'd be 30-some cents a bushel in soybeans. So we are talking some significant price movement potential if the dollar weakens further. But again, I'd caution we are at a technical support point here, and we'd expect some of the shorts to take some of the money off the table here.
All right, well, Labor Day week was a big week in the hog market, especially when you saw 2 major processing plants come online. We know that the demand is happening there, so we see supplies increase, and it's really a supply story right now. But is the demand on the other side to eat through this processed product?
Well, and that's a good question. I think that's what we're going to sort out in the marketplace. But when you look at it, there's no doubt we're in a supply bear market on the hogs. You look at last year, we went down close to $41 a hundredweight on December. 2015, you went down to $52 a hundredweight. You know, we got up over $60 a hundredweight this last week. But you're going to have supplies that are really on the rise. 2% more in the third quarter, 4% more in the fourth quarter of this year. But then when you jump out to the second quarter of next year, almost 7% more than a year ago. So no doubt these processing plants coming on board, it's a big deal. It's really going to increase the slaughter capacity, and it's going to help the overall demand from a producer standpoint.
So what impact do you think that has on price?
Well, I tell you, I think you're going to have to expand the exports and you're going to have to expand the domestic. I think it's going to have more of a basis effect than you do a flat price. I think until we sort through this, you have to use rallies as risk management opportunities in a supply bear market.
Arlen, do you think demand can keep up on this pork side, and ultimately, what are you forecasting for price?
Well, and that's where the weak dollar really plays in. The wheat market and the meat market are two places where the dollar has its biggest impact. We saw weekly export sales in the last USDA report showing very strong pork and beef exports. The weaker dollar finally starting to have an effect there. As we look back to mid-August, we've seen belly prices down about 70 cents during that period of time, but all of the other product categories have been rising in price. The demand has been supportive. So I think we're starting to find an area now where demand's starting to support.
Alan, it's also a supply story in this cattle market. So, you know, if we continue to grow supplies, it doesn't seem like that's going to be favorable to prices.
Yeah, I think we've got a real challenge. As has been mentioned, the hog production's up, the pork production's up, but the beef production's also, we're at a 7 or 8 year high, likely in the fourth quarter in beef production. Chicken production continues to expand at 2 or 3% per year. So you've got this total meat supply that you've got to move. And we're still in the ramping up part of the cattle cycle at this point. So, yeah, we're a little bearish on the meat market in general because we've got to move all this product out in the fourth quarter. Cattle cycle low is due in the futures, though, so that might help us.
All right, thanks so much. We need to take a quick break. We'll get their closing thoughts when we come back on U.S. Farm Report. All right, time now for closing thoughts. Arlen, we'll start with you.
I think soybeans had the best opportunity to pop if we get a smaller crop because the demand is so strong. I'm not bullish to grain and oilseeds, but I do like the money coming back into the commodities, and I think we can appreciate prices over the coming years. More money comes into the commodity sector.
Alan?
I think you need to remember the market is not a pogo hockey stick, it's a pogo stick. It doesn't just go down and lay there when we have these big supplies. It moves around. You should expect a trading range of about $1 a bushel over the next 12 months in corn, and you just have to take advantage of the opportunities.
All right. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, I think when you look at this next year, remember the government's telling us that next year is going to look very much like last year did. Make sure you analyze the carries that we have in the corn and soybean market. Probably try and merchandise yourself out of the market rather than speculate yourself out of the market. So there's opportunities with the carries in the market. Make sure you analyze those and use them to your advantage.
All right, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. We need to take a quick break, and then John Phipps joins us next.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by John Deere. Where can you find the most comprehensive inventory of John Deere certified pre-owned tractors, combines, and sprayers? MachineFinder.com. Sometimes the best new addition to your fleet isn't new. U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Credenz soybean seed from Bayer, designed using smart genetics with tailored varieties to fit any field condition.
Images captured from drones are something we love to air on our program just because it's a view you just can't get from the ground. But for farming purposes, how does it compare to satellite imagery? Here's John Phipps.
A few weeks ago, I poked fun at ag drones by pointing out that it's hard to generate income by flying over your crops. But there is another more serious reason why I am really not on the drone bandwagon, and that's that they may be superfluous soon. Consider this screenshot from my computer of my location on Google Maps. Now let's switch to the satellite view. Now, since shifting to Landsat 8 last year, the resolution on Google Earth has gotten just a little spooky, frankly. The satellite's 435 miles high and orbits the Earth about every 100 minutes. It records 700 scenes per day. This image is from about this time of the year in 2015. Images are selected by how rapidly things on the ground are changing, so updates for my location are unpredictable. What I want to show is this. If you zoom into the highest resolution, I noted with some consternation that you could tell if anyone was in the pool. Aside from making me think twice about skinny dipping, this suggests to me that if public images are this good, what must the military and intelligence images from satellites be like? Regardless, much of my skepticism on the future of drones is based on the prediction that as satellites become smaller, more sophisticated, and much cheaper to launch, we may not be that far away from nearly real-time crop monitoring from space. Even weekly images of your farm would be powerful tools, especially since it would be easy to stack successive shots into a stop-action video of the crop developing. It's easy to forget how two-dimensional our thinking is. Just climbing to the top of a grain bin can be a surprising epiphany, and that's only 50-odd feet. The idea behind drones may be valid, but it looks to me like that type of information will be better and cheaper when it comes from space.
Thanks, John. Well, 4 years of negative net farm income is the reality in farm country, but weathering that storm is where farmers shine. So are better days ahead? That's our Farm Journal report after the break.
From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. This weekend, we have much more ahead. Farmer sentiments slip, but future outlooks improve. The results are in from the latest Ag Economy Barometer. Resiliency reigns in farm country with farm bankruptcies muted, but will that continue? That's our Farm Journal report. Baxter Black explains the theory of a triangle, and John Phipps has some eye-catching gadgets to show off in customer support. Now for the headlines, farmer sentiment slipping in a recent survey as sluggish grain prices eat into outlooks, but those sentiments still setting well above year-ago levels. The latest Ag Economy Barometer showing farmer sentiments dipping to 132, down 7 points from July's survey. Purdue and CME based their index on a survey of 400 producers. The drop in sentiments from pressured prices, but producer sentiments still noticeably above year-ago levels.
These are not saying that these are overall good times in the ag economy. There's still a lot of concern. 4 out of 10 producers think that reported their operation is worse off today than a year ago. So this underscores a difficult time out there. But we haven't seen, we've seen some improvement and some moderation in the last 12 months, and we've seen an uptick in sentiment as a result.
Despite the dip in moods short term, farmers remain more optimistic about future expectations.
By working together, we're going to restore America's competitive edge.
Farmers and ranchers looking for reprieve from what some view as a burdensome tax code. The president revealing a few more details of his plans to overhaul the current tax plan in North Dakota this week. That includes hitting a chord with farmers, saying he plans to throw out the estate or death tax, even calling it a tremendous burden for family farmers and other businesses. During the president's speech, he promised Americans that he won't allow the death tax to crush the American dream. The president says tax reform includes a 4-point plan.
We need a tax code that is simple, fair, and easy to understand, unlike what we have. Second, we will cut taxes for middle-class families. This is a major, major tax cut, the biggest since Ronald Reagan. Third, we need a tax code that restores our competitive edge so we can create more jobs and higher wages for American workers. Our plan will provide tax relief to businesses of all sizes, and we will cut the business tax rate as much as possible. Ideally, we would like to bring our business tax rate down to around 15%. That's a tremendous drop.
Democrats like North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp say the plan still lacks necessary details. Round 2 of NAFTA negotiations now in the books without any major breakthroughs on a new trade pact. Trade officials from Mexico, Canada, and the U.S. met in Mexico, but the president of the United States also threatening to remove the U.S. from the South Korean trade deal.
I'm real concerned about this, the saber rattling about trade. And we need to see expanding trade, not limiting trade. If we renegotiate NAFTA, let's be careful with it, because NAFTA, Mexico and Canada are 2 of our most important trading partners for almost every state that we survey.
Goss thinks the grain sector has the most at stake when looking specifically at NAFTA. All this talk about trade, the latest numbers from U.S. Meat Export Federation shows beef shipments were the shining star in July. USMEF says beef exports up 5% year-over-year in volume and 18% higher in value. Shipments to Japan climbing 20% from July 2016, but that's before Japan slapped an increased tariff on U.S. U.S. beef. Now, it's a different story for pork. The U.S. shipments were down 4% from a year ago in volume. One bright spot, pork exports to South Korea shot up 30% over last year. Well, it's drought eating into outlooks in the northern plains, and as dryness tightens its grip, wildfires rage. So far, the flames charred nearly 1.5 million acres, forcing evacuations and ranchers finding safer ground for livestock. Check out this dramatic time-lapse video of the fierce fires in the Columbia River Gorge area in Washington state. It shows you how quickly the wildfires consume areas, with this video shot in just 12 hours. The drought in Montana, breeding ground for wildfires, ongoing for months, with more than 1 million acres burned in that state alone this year. All right, that's it for the news. Meteorologist Cindy Clausen joins us now with the national forecast. Cindy, from wildfires in the northwest to hurricane in the southeast, it's two extremes for our viewers this week. Hopefully there's relief in your extended outlook.
Yeah, Tyne, it definitely has been stressful for both reasons. You know, you've got two different extremes between hurricanes and wildfires, and we don't certainly want to see any of that. Let's start you off with the jet stream, and we are looking at still a pretty big ridge in the nation's midsection. That's going to keep those temperatures on the warm side, especially for much of the central United States. That ridge is going to be moving off to the east. For a lot of folks, it's been cool, so it'll mean a warm up for much of the Great Lakes in the northeast. You can actually see Irma on our forecast model showing the jet stream. You could actually see the low pressure over Irma there. We do continue to see warm temperatures out in the west, but notice we start to see a little bit of a dip in the jet stream again, bringing some cooler temperatures back into the Great Lakes and into the northeast as we get into next weekend. All right, here's a look at our 30-day temperatures. We're going to be a bit on the cool side all the way from the Great Lakes down to the Gulf Coast states, a little bit warm out into the west and into southern Florida. And as far as precipitation, we are looking at wet conditions across the eastern seaboard, a little bit out in the west, but most of the nation's midsection is expected to be on the dry side. Tyne?
Thanks, Cindy. Well, USDA revising its net farm income forecast this year, showing net farm income could be in the green, up 13% from last year. But it's the tale of two stories, with the livestock sector performing better than grains. Despite turbulence in farm country, economists continue to be impressed by farmers' resiliency. The grim outlook on the farm economy is a broken record for farmers, with 4 straight years of negative net farm income. But after multiple years of declining cash flow, signs are modestly pointing up.
I think it's probably better than we expected last year, but still nowhere near where we want it to be.
Jackson Takish is an economist for Farmer Mac. In the latest quarterly edition of The Feed, Farmer Mac revealing livestock producers faring better than their grain counterparts so far in 2017.
If you look at the dairy industry, if you look at the cattle industry, hogs, poultry, mostly on the livestock sectors, cash receipts look to be up this year compared to 16, much higher than we expected at the beginning of the year.
Farmer Mac says despite the crumbling corn prices, the overall ag economy is showing signs of rebounding.
I think we're on our way. I do think that the declines in net farm income have started to level off, and we saw a bounce this year in net farm income and net cash income is what we're expecting. So maybe we're close to that bottom now.
But it's those farming areas heavily reliant upon row crops still showing stress.
In our area, I would anticipate we're going to see flat incomes at best. Obviously, there's going to be some outliers, but I would say across the board, we're looking at flat incomes in contrast to last year.
Hoskins says the yield story is still unwritten, but once combines roll this fall, a more accurate financial picture will be portrayed.
We're definitely seeing people that are going through some stress financially, no question. I think one of the things that we're really looking for is the stress in working capital.
Hoskins says after harvest, when producers push the pencil to paper, if red is the final number, conversation is key.
Don't be afraid to have that conversation with your lender, with your spouse, with the person helping you with marketing, because just because it doesn't pencil out next year, candidly, there were operations that ran into situations this year where it didn't pencil out.
Hoskins says in some cases there's still enough working capital reserve to offset down years. But it's that working capital that's helped many producers survive the economic headwinds.
That's a surprising factor in there, that delinquencies are up, bankruptcies, foreclosures are up, but not what you'd expect. We've had 4 straight years of declining farm income.
So the delinquency rates are still very low. I would have expected more of a movement if we were going to have a really significant downturn in the farm financial sector. So they're still pretty low historically, but they are up from the absolute lows that we saw back in 2016. So that was kind of the bottom of the level of farm delinquencies at banks and farm credits. So it's up a little bit, but it's not up double or triple that the levels that we saw maybe in 2009 during the financial crisis and the Great Recession. So we're not seeing any sort of jumps like we did back then. So I think that's a pretty positive sign looking forward.
That resiliency is one reason Takish has a slightly more positive outlook on the farm economy.
Well, I got to give the ag economy somewhat of like a B minus, maybe upgraded from a C earlier this year, just because we have seen the livestock, that half of the ag sector is doing much better than we expected. So they're kind of raising the tide a little bit.
Well, Goss foresees continued pain for producers for the next few months. It's the start of a new calendar year that could bring a fresh start, improving from a C grade today.
When you put livestock in with grains, it gets better. And so I'd give it a C, and that C I expect to move up to B by Q1 of 2018.
Now, despite uncertainty surrounding trade, Goss likes what he sees regarding exports and the U.S. dollar. That's why he thinks that a declining U.S. dollar in trade will help drive improved ag conditions into the new year. Also, if you'd like a copy of Farmer Mac's The Feed, which comes out late next week, just go to farmermac.com and sign up. All right, up next, John Phipps.
Is anybody listening out there?
Your call is very important to us. Please hold.
Well, if you've watched our program over the years, you know John is a fan of technology, and it's some of those gadgets that catch viewers' attention on the farm. John?
Okay, a few weeks ago I talked about how our brains can struggle when we are in scarcity mode, something I thought might help people improve their decision making during harvest. But for some of you, there was a different message. For example, there was this email from Sherry Klingensmith. Is that an electric opener on your straight truck? Where did you find that? And an even better one from Larry Bohe. I hope that's correct. On August 27, you were on your farm standing behind two tandems. It looks like you have hydraulic assist cylinders on your end gates of those trucks. My mom is 84 and wants to drive the 2 tons another year like she has the last 60 plus years, but her problem is getting the end gates up. Where did you get the assist cylinders for the end gates? Trying to retire her, but you know how that goes. Local grain elevator help would miss her though. Look, I hate to be a party to elder abuse, but my son just had this same conversation with the lady I live with, who is slightly younger, so I know where you're coming from, Larry. Now, Farm Journal has a strict prohibition on endorsements by people like me, but I'm going to make an exception here. The electric grain gate is made by Shurco, S-H-U-R-C-O. If you Google Shurco electric gate, you'll go right to it. This will be our second year with the grain gate, hoist control, and electric tarp, and we've been happy with the performance of all of them. You can control the gate from the back of the bed, but for unloading at an auger with the wind swirling around, the remote is a huge improvement because you can stand somewhere upwind. Not only is it a back saver, it keeps people cleaner and safer. Note, it is not particularly fast, but I think that's a good thing. Installation was not hard, and we've had 0 problems. If anyone from Shurco is watching, I do accept free will donations. Well, thanks for watching. Send me an address for your mugs, and maybe some week I'll stumble onto a topic that will hold your attention a little better.
Thanks, John. And if you have questions or comments for John, just email him at mailbag@usfarmreport.com. Well, when we come back, we head out west with Baxter Black.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Corvus Pre-Emergence Corn Herbicide from Bayer, the only herbicide to offer 3 levels of defense against weeds, burn down, residual, and activation with rain.
It's time now to pay a visit out west and catch up with Baxter Black.
Triangles have a unique place in our world. Engineers use them to build bridges. Pythagoras used it to create his theorem, and the shortstop uses it to make a double play. Triangles strengthen structures. They take 3 straight lines going nowhere and form a bond that can withstand great pressure. Now, I get to see this cohesive combination in another triangle: woman, horse, child. It's really evident when the child has Down syndrome or multiple sclerosis or any other disability that restricts their possibilities. In a lot of these equine therapeutic riding programs that I've visited, women are the predominant hands-on helpers in the arena. To be successful, a mutual trust has to be established. See, a woman introduces the child to the horse, and this allows the child to give the horse the benefit of the doubt because the woman trusts the horse and the child trusts the woman. When the child is set up on a horse's back, it's really still in his mother's arms, ready to be rescued if need be. And through a long progression of walks around the arena, the child's faith increases in the horse, and eventually the child will trust it. So the triangle is complete. We've connected the woman to the child, to the horse, and back to the woman. And it's especially obvious at any equine therapeutic riding center. Check it out for yourself. You'll see small islands of woman, horse, child. Concentrate on one of those triangles, and then imagine the child on the horse is yours. You become hypersensitive to the slightest movement, be it protective or encouraging or loving. And even the smallest step in this magic triangle performance going on in the arena becomes magnified. Successes are marked in the tiniest gesture and the slightest touch and the tentative smile and the skip of a heartbeat. And through the cloud that puts you in their triangle, you hear the softest of voices saying, "It's all right. He won't hurt you." This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter. And if you'd like to hear more from him, just visit baxterblack.com. Well, up next, Machinery Pete showcases a tractor gym turning heads everywhere it goes. Please stay with us.
This is Machinery Pete, inviting you to check out my new website, machinerypete.com, offering farmers tens of thousands of used equipment listings to search. Let Machinery Pete help you find and value your next piece of used equipment.
Tractor Tales is brought to you by John Deere. Where can you find the most comprehensive inventory of John Deere certified pre-owned tractors, combines, and sprayers? MachineFinder.com. Sometimes the best new addition to your fleet isn't new.
Welcome back to Tractor Tales, folks. This week we've got something for you I'm guessing you've never seen before. This 1928 Centaur tractor draws attention everywhere it goes. Owner Tom Cheek told us not many people have seen one quite like it. It's a two-cylinder tractor built in Ohio and packs a lot of character.
This is a early model tractor. It's a Centaur made by the Central Tractor Company from Greenwich, Ohio. Model G, two-cylinder, 6 horsepower, water-cooled, 2 speeds, forward, neutral, and reverse. So it's a very early tractor. And as best as I'm aware, it was made in 1928. It could have been made anywhere from 1926 through 28. But it was an early model tractor that would allow the farmer to use his previously purchased mule or horse-drawn equipment with it without buying any additional equipment. They ended up doing quite a bit of improvising and made some heavier tractors, some for industrial models, which even had a much larger engine, and half of the engine had an air compressor on it, and half of it was used to run it so that they could use it for industrial tooling. I like the tractor because it is so unique. I've never seen anything even close to what it is, and I had one individual that was 89 years old come up and say, "Son, I'm 89 years old," and he said, "I've never seen a tractor like this."
Thanks, Greg and Tom. Well, this week's Country Church Salute goes to the Good Samaritan Episcopal Church located in Sauk Center, Minnesota. It's a special weekend as the congregation is celebrating its 150th anniversary on Sunday. Congratulations, and our thanks to Nancy Anderson for sending that in. Up next, farmers rushing to beat Mother Nature. We have the photos next.
Unlock the power of ag technology this December in Indianapolis at the first ever Ag Tech Expo. Learn all about it at farmjournalagtech.com.
Welcome back. Well, it was really a race against Mother Nature this week as farmers in the southeast prepared for the worst. Those harvest-ready stocks would be no match for fierce winds from the hurricane. Tyrone was busy trying to harvest corn in South Carolina in case they were in Hurricane Irma's path. He says harvest has been pretty good this year, with yields ranging in that 160 to 190 bushel per acre range. And Ross Bell is busy harvesting in northeast Arkansas. He says both corn and bean yields have been impressive so far, showing above average yields on the combine monitor. Good news to hear. If you have any pictures or videos you would like to send in, you can do that to the address on the screen. Well, for all of us from U.S. Farm Report, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join us again right here next week as we work to build on our tradition, and have a great, safe weekend, everyone.
U.S. Farm Report, America's longest-lasting news program for farmers, is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups. U.S. Farm Report is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Broadcast.